And UFC London this Saturday night from the O2 Arena in your main event. It is the return of Tom Aspinall, who main events his third UFC fight night again back in England after beating Alexander Volkov and losing to Curtis Blades. He is back after injury. 364 days removed from that fight against Curtis Blades, he returns against one Marcin Tybura in the main event. And I'll just be honest with you, there's 15 fights in this card. It could be better. The first London card was really good. It was the return card with Volkov and Aspinall in the main event was really good. Then the Blades Aspinall card is pretty good. Then the pay-per-view they ran was pretty good. This card feels a little bit underwhelming. There's some good fights and there's some big names. The thing that stands out is, why is Molly McCann in the co-main event? That does not make sense. She's fighting a fighter who's 1-5 in Julia Stoliarenko. But again, 15 fights in this card. It's going to be a long one. So buckle in here on the channel, folks. If you have not yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more UFC here on the channel. We will also have later, probably on Tuesday, a closer look. No, it will not be Diakiese du Plessis again, but the last one was about Diakiese du Plessis. A lot of people liked that video. I thought it was pretty good. We'll have another fighter on this card this week. One of these 30 fighters will be featured on our new closer look, so make sure to go check that out Tuesday on the channel. Should be coming at you noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern on the Greedo Plays channel. Let's now get into this 15 fight card. We will start things off. Our first fight will not be this one. I got the wrong fight. Here it is. It will be Filho taking on Daniel Barez in our first fight for Filho here, coming off his last fight where he did lose to Mohamed Mokaev in his UFC debut. He'll be taking on a fighter here, though, in Daniel Barez, the fighter from Spain, 16-5, coming off of a win over in UWC in 2023, a main card victory. Of course, this fight being contested at the flyweight division. For Barez, he got a shot in the Contender Series back in 2021 against Carlos Hernandez, which he did lose by split decision. And again, for Filho, he's coming off that one fight of loss to Mohamed Mokaev, where he got submitted in the third round. That fight again, where Filo's doing some damage to Mokaev, but Mokaev again gets the finish by neck crank in the third. That's on that Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards 3 card again earlier this year in London, England. Filho is a decent favorite in this one. You look at him, -120. I guess on Tapology, he's a pretty decent favorite. Odds-wise, again, this fight is close, +120 for Barez, +100 for Barez, and -120 for, again, Filho, who has fought before in the UFC. Again, Barez, you look at this guy, 7 wins by knockout in the past, 6 by submission for Filho, 8 by submission, 5 by knockout. Filho has been submitted in the past. Again, you look at the Mokaev fight, but really, he's got a pretty solid ground game. You saw his striking really showcased as well on the Contender Series, and he's got power too. Filho is one of these guys at 125 who can get finishes and can get them effectively. Again, his opponent Barez is able to get finishes as well. It should be a really fun fight at 125 pounds. Likely to kick off the card. I'm not completely sure what the order is going to be on this card. I don't quite have it. But for Barez, making his UFC debut at 34 years old, which is a little bit older for the flyweight division. Of course, we have a new flyweight champion being Alexandre Pantoja. But I'm going to be taking the favorite in this fight. I'm going to take Filho to win this fight. I think he's going to get it done by submission. Again, I think the ground game is going to play a big factor into this one. Barez is a guy who has been submitted twice so far in his career. I know Filho has been submitted twice in his career as well, but I think if Jafel is able to get this fight down, I think he has a lot more pathways to victory. I think his striking is probably better than Barez as well. I think all around, Jafel Filho is the better fighter, and I think he's able to go out here and he's able to pick up victory. I'm going to go a second round submission victory for Jafel, the Pastor Filho, to pick up the victory here in his second fight in the UFC, going now to a 1-1 record. Okay, next up, we will have a fight now between Bruna Brasil taking on the UFC newcomer Inshana Bannon. Bannon. We will have Bruna Brasil, who's coming off her fight where she did lose to Denise Gomez. And for Denise Gomes, I mean, the stock has not been higher after her knockout victory in the first round over Yasmin Yargi on International Fight Week. But for Shana Bannon, coming off her win in Invicta in her last fight, beating her opponent by unanimous decision. I won't say a big signing for the UFC, but the Irish fighter, 29 years of age, She fought Dakota Diakiese back in the amateur ranks in 2020. Of course, the PFL's own Diakiese, who I think is likely on her way to win a PFL Europe Championship later this year. She's 3-0 in PFL, 8-0 professionally. She's kind of she's their big fighter in the women's weight class, is Dakota Diakiese in the PFL. She's one of their bigger stars, only 25 years old. But for Shanna Bannon, again, 5-0 professionally. That loss to Diakiese was in the amateur ranks. Pretty good on the ground. You've seen her one finish in Cage Legacy 16 was by ground and pound. She's had 5 professional fights. 4 of them took place in 2022. Her opponent in Bruna, Brazil, again, is coming off the loss to Denise Gomez, which, like, we can be honest, is not a bad loss, because Denise Gomez, we've seen her go out and knock out Yasmin Ayargi in the first round. This fight was contested in Kansas City, the fight between Brazil and Gomez. Gomez, again, gets to finish in the second round, and Bruna Brazil really isn't able to get much going in that fight. Denise Gomez out-wrestles her in the first round. Denise Gomez out-strikes her. Second round, all Denise Gomez. She knocks down Bruna Brazil. She gets the finish on the ground. She's able to take Brazil down a couple times in that round. It was all Denise Gomez, but now when we look at this fight between Bannon in Brazil, you got to think, was that just Denise Gomez, because now we've seen her with a victory over Yasmin Ayargi, or was that Bruna Brazil really is not the greatest? And now for Brazil, before the Denise Gomez fight, if you are looking for some positive things out of Gomez, the win on the Contender Series in 2022, the head kick knockout win over Marnik Mann, a second round knockout finish, a win in LFA before that, on a card that was actually, the card that was, I believe it was the, was that not the card where they did, like the Brazil Civil War, I believe. I think it was in LFA. Anyways, or that might have been the next Brazil card in LFA. But that's besides the point. Bruna Brazil's a fighter who, in this one, will likely try to get this fight to the ground. But Shanna's pretty good down there as well. So it's a lower level women's fight. You really don't know entirely what to expect. It's at straw weight. Don't put any money down on this. I mean, your odds are looking at plus 105 for the underdog in Bannon, and then minus 130 for the favorite in Bruna Brazil. I'll go with the favorite. No, I'll go with the underdog. We're going to go with the underdog. Again, this is one of these fights where I'm not confident at all. This could really go either way. It's just a really small sample size for the Irish fighter in Bannon, and then for Bruna Brazil, I just don't know what to expect either. We know Brazil's going to have power on the feet. We know she's going to be able to, she's going to try to look for the kill on the feet, but I'm going to say that Bannon has a slight edge on the ground. And fighting, I know she's not at home, but still, fighting closer to home, I think Shanna Bannon is able to go out there and pick up the victory. Not confident at all at the pick, but give me Bannon to win this fight by unanimous decision. Next up, I don't anticipate this fight being this low on the card, but if it is, here it is. A huge fight between Brian Bam Bam Barberena and Mahmoud Muradov in the middleweight division. A huge fight here because Muradov's a guy who's coming off his last fight, losing it to Caio Borralho. Muradov is on a 2-fight losing streak after starting his UFC career 3-0 over the wins over Alessio Di Chirico, Trevor Smith, and Andrew Sanchez. Muradov has now dropped back-to-back fights to Gerald GM3 Mearshart and Caio Borralho. Now, the Mearshart fight was a fight that Muradov was a huge favorite in, but Gerald Mearshart in that second round takes his back and submits him with a rear naked choke after dropping the first round, which was likely again given to Mahmoud Muradov. Muradov's fight after that, they give him a very tough opponent, UFC 280. They give him Caio Borralho, and you know what Borralho does to guys. He's a very good jiu-jitsu player. He's really good at maintaining top position. Now, he just got his first finish in the UFC in his last fight for Michal Zolshashek, but Caio Borralho in that Mahmoud Muradov fight is able to ground Muradov and really just hold him down. 30-27 on 2 out of 3 cards, the other one being a 29-28 again for the Brazilian fighter in Caio Borralho. But Muradov was just kind of outmatched in that fight. The round that you can maybe give to Muradov is the second, which I think that's probably the round you do give to him. I think it is 29-28. But Caio Borralho showed that he was the better grappler. He was better at finding top position. He was better really just all around on the ground than Mahmoud Muradov. And again, it's tough for Muradov after, again, starting his UFC career 3-0. He now has lost back-to-back fights. He's 3-2. But they give him a guy in Brian Bam Bam Barberena, who Barberena is a fun fighter to watch. Don't get me wrong. This is a guy who's willing to go out there at any time, take on anybody. He's willing to stand and bang with you. However, this is the fight where Mahmoud Muradov can come back, regroup, and win a fight by taking a guy down. Brian Bam Bam Barberena, really isn't the greatest grappler. This is a guy who, in even his wins, he will get taken down. There's been an obvious trend in Barberena fights. You look at his last fight, back again in London, he loses to Gunnar Nelson. Nelson submits him in the first round. His loss against Rafael Dos Anjos. Dos Anjos dominates him on the ground, submits him in the second round. Dos Anjos scores 4 takedowns in that fight. The Robbie Lawler fight never hit the mat. Robbie Lawler stood and he swung with Bryan Barberena. Barberena got the better end of that. Shout out to Robbie Lawler, by the way, finishing his career with a knockout victory over Nico Price. That was pretty damn cool. Bryan Barberena's win in Columbus, Ohio over Matt Brown. He beats him by split decision, but Matt Brown, what does he do effectively? He takes down Bryan Barberena. He takes him down 5 times in that fight. The Barberena fight where he goes and beats Darian Weeks in the Apex. He wins the fight. Weeks takes him down 4 times. Barberena's loss to Jason Witt. He gets taken down 8 times. Even in a win over Anthony Ivy, who was not the greatest UFC fighter, Bryan Barberena still gets taken down 5 times. If you can get Barberena down and you're somewhat decent at jiu-jitsu, you're likely going to submit Bryan Barberena. I'm surprised so many people are taking Makhmud Muradov by knockout in this fight. I know Muradov is not a submission specialist, but I definitely, I don't know what the prop is on a submission, but I wouldn't be surprised if Muradov's able to get him down and submit him. I know Muradov's not this crazy submission guy, but again, the pathway to victory is right there. But again, Muradov started off his UFC career with a lot of power, and I know, again, his last 2 fights he's been dominated on the ground, but you don't want to get into a back-and-forth swing competition with Bryan Barberena. However, I think the grappling opportunity is really going to present itself for Muradov, because, again, it is a running thing, I think, with Bryan Barberena at this point, is that he is very susceptible of being taken down, so if Makhmud Muradov can get him down, hold him down, maybe he can end up fighting the submission. I'm not going to pick the submission because it is a tough pick, because Barberena, again, as a guy who does get submitted, but for Muradov, he hasn't gotten a submission finish yet in the UFC. I will go with a ground and pound finish, though, for Makhmud Muradov. I think if he's able to take Barberena down, I don't know what Barberena can really offer fighting off his back. Muradov, again, has been beat on the ground his last 2 fights against Mearshart and Borjaio, but Bryan Barberena's grappling game is not even comparable to the likes of Borjaio and Mearshart. So this is all Makhmud Muradov in this fight. On the feet, sure, I wouldn't feel great about Muradov standing and banging with Bryan Barberena, because Barberena does hit hard and he's a good striker. I would still pick Muradov to win that fight, but I think the way better opportunity for him, if he can get the grappling and the wrestling going, it's a takedown, really just working on Barberena on the ground. So I think Makhmud Muradov is able to go out there. I think he's able to pick up a second round TKO finish. I think Muradov gets back in the win column. This is a fight that he can definitely get his footing. He can really get his grappling going. And again, just work his all around game. Can work the striking and really just mix it up as well. Give me Makhmud Muradov to win this fight by second round TKO. Again, reason he's a minus 300 favorite. On to the next one. Now in the bantamweight division, we have got Ketlen Vieira taking on Pannie Kianzad. Vieira is a pretty sizable favorite on Tapology, 85% going for her, minus 200 on the odds, compared to Kianzad's plus 160. For Ketlen Vieira, coming off a loss to Raquel Pennington in her last fight, and for Vieira, again, a fighter who at one point in time was definitely looked at as a potential challenger for Amanda Nunes. I mean, she wins back-to-back fights over the likes of Miesha Tate and Holly Holm, 2 former world champions she beats in both main events, by the way, and again, it was in the Apex, but still, a main event win over Miesha Tate, a main event victory over Holly Holm. Now, I did not think she beat Holly Holm, and I'll be honest with you, I'm recording this video on very early Friday morning, so I don't know if Holly Holm beat Mayra Bueno Silva yet, but that's besides the point. Ketlen Vieira beats Holly Holm. She loses to Raquel Pennington, though. She loses a very close fight to Pennington, which she drops by a split decision. It's on that Strickland and Imavov card to kick off the year of 2023. Pennington outstrikes Vieira in that fight. Vieira is the one grappling. She wins the 3rd round by taking Pennington down, but the first 2 rounds were won by Rocky Pennington, outstriking Ketlen Vieira to victory. And now, we've talked about it at length before with the state of the bantamweight division. I've said it and I'll say it again. Again, I'm recording this before Holly Holm fights Mayra Bueno Silva, but if Holly Holm's able to go out there and impressively beat Mayra Bueno Silva, I think they will give her Juliana Pena. If she does not impressively beat Mayra Bueno Silva, or she either takes damage or hell she loses, then I think it will be Raquel Pennington taking on Juliana Pena next. However, I think Ketlen Vieira is going to be on the way, just going to be on the outside looking in for the title shot. I do think she's a couple fights away. If she can pick up the victory, this is a good start for her. But she's taking on a fighter here, and Pannie Kianzad, who's coming off a victory over Lena Landsberg in her last fight, but Lena Landsberg was kind of just getting beat by everybody. Kianzad beats her by unanimous decision. It's something that I talked about when we were talking about Mayra Bueno Silva fighting Holly Holm. It's like, okay, Silva submitted Landsberg, but everybody's beating Lena Landsberg. And now Kianzad was the second off the 4 to beat Landsberg. Sarah McMahon did it first, then Kianzad, then Carhosa, then Mauro Bueno Silva. But in that fight against Lena Landsberg, again, that is Kianzad's last fight in April of 2022. She does get knocked down in the second round of that fight, but she's able to go out there and win the rounds that she doesn't get knocked down in. That's the first and the third round. The third round's all Penny Kianzad outstriking Lena Landsberg. And the first round is her out grappling Lena Landsberg. So it showed both, again, of the grappling and the striking in that fight. After getting dropped in the second round, again, losing that second round by getting dropped. Kianzad is able to come back and win that fight. Before that, for her, she drops the fight to, again, the aforementioned Raquel Pennington. Pennington beats her by unanimous decision in a closer fight in the Apex. She beats Alexis Davis before that. She beats Sijara Eubanks, beats Betch Kohea, beats Jessica Rose Clark as well to get that 4-fight winning streak. But how does she beat Ketlen Vieira? Well, I think she's going to have to keep the fight standing, and she's going to have to use her takedown defense, because for Kianzad, 80% takedown defense rate so far in the UFC, she has been shot on a fair amount in the past. If she's able to keep the fight in the feet against Ketlen Vieira, that's a big plus for her to win this fight. Because Vieira, it's where she's going to want the fight. Even though, again, even a fight, back-to-back main events, we've talked about it, against Miesha Tate and Holly Holm, she's able to go out there. She couldn't use the grappling. She didn't really take down, I know she didn't take down Miesha Tate, because Miesha Tate was the one looking for takedowns. And in the Holly Holm fight, Vieira couldn't get a takedown. Now, even though, again, I think a lot of people are under the assumption, a lot of people think that she lost that fight. I think that's a very clear rounds 2, 4, and 5 for Holly Holm. But still, on the record books, Ketlen Vieira goes out there and outstrikes 2 former world champions in Holly Holm and Miesha Tate in back-to-back fights. And again, I know Tate was never the greatest striker, but still, Ketlen Vieira went out there and outstruck both those fighters to victory. And it's going to have to be something where, if she isn't able to get the takedown against against Penny Kianzad, right? She can go out there, and I think she can definitely outstrike Kianzad too. But on the ground, I like Ketlen Vieira a lot as well. I think Vieira is able to go out here. I think she's able to pick up a pretty, I wouldn't say easy victory, but I like her on the feet. I like her on the ground. I'm going to go Ketlen Vieira to beat Penny Kianzad. She'll be able to get it done by unanimous decision. On to the next. I couldn't really find odds on this fight, which is odd. I think, I'm not mistaken, I think this one was not put on short notice, right? We've got Danny Roberts taking on Johnny Parsons. Yeah, this was always supposed to be the matchup here, so I don't know why I couldn't find odds, but I looked on Best Fight Odds, just Googled it. As of Friday, July 14th, I couldn't find odds for this fight, so you're going to have to look them up yourself, sorry. But Danny Roberts taking on Johnny Parsons in this one. For Parsons, still yet to make his UFC debut. This will be the fight right now on this card in London against Danny Roberts. And for Danny Roberts, again, coming off his loss to Jack Della Maddalena, losing by first-round knockout. I don't know, again, how Maddalena's fight went. In the co-main event against Basil Hafiz. I believe you say his name. I'm not completely sure. I need to watch some of his fights before he fights Maddalena in a couple days. But I'm assuming Maddalena knocked him out in the first round, probably. But Roberts' last fight is a loss to JDM, Jack Della Maddalena. He gets knocked out in the first round. Before that, for Roberts, he drops a fight by unanimous decision to Francisco Trinaldo. And then before that, for Danny Roberts, he beats Ramzan Emeev by split decision. He beats Ziam Amadiev, and then drops back-to-back fights before that to Michel Pereira and Claudio Silva as well. For Johnny Parsons, again, still has not made that UFC debut. He was booked in February of 2022. That's how long ago it was, against Michael Gilmore. Now, that was a layup win for Johnny Parsons, because Michael Gilmore is a guy who should have not been in the UFC. He was a late replacement guy in the Ultimate Fighter who they brought in. Dana White really liked that he came in on short notice. He lost to Gilbert Urbina on the Ultimate Fighter, but then they gave him Andre Petrosky. He loses. They book him against Johnny Parsons. Fight doesn't happen. Then he gets submitted in the first round by Ramiz Brahimaj. Probably the easiest Ramiz Brahimaj pick I have ever made. And I don't even know what happened to Ramiz Brahimaj. This guy's not fought since he beat Michael Gilmore. Anyways, Johnny Parsons was booked to get that easy victory over Michael Gilmore. He couldn't make the fight. And now they book him in a pretty hard fight, I think, in an entry-level fight. Danny Roberts is tough. He's 7-6 in the UFC. This is a guy who, again, I know he was on the wrong end of a knockout loss to Jack Della Maddalena. We saw that one coming. The Francisco Trinaldo fight was just a bad fight for him. He couldn't get going as well. But when Danny Roberts is on, he is pretty good. The Ramzan Emeev fight, again, was not his best performance either, I'll be honest with you. The Ziam Amadiev fight's pretty good, where he knocks him out in the second round, and that was all the way back. I believe that was in Moscow, the Zabit Magomed Sharapov and Calvin Kattar card. So it's been that long since we've seen, I think, a good Danny Roberts. But what are we going to get out of Johnny Parsons? Now, I think Johnny Parsons' win on the Contender Series keeps looking better and better. It's the win over Solomon Renfro, who for Renfro comes into the PFL, picks up a Fab 5 finish against Gerard Hussein Al-Sawali in his first fight in the PFL. And again, for Renfro, this is a guy who's likely going to be in the weight class and in the group play standings for the welterweight division next year for the PFL after his 5-point knockout finish. That's a good win for of course, Johnny Parsons. He goes in the Contender, he beats Solomon Renfro. I mean, you look at how that fight went, Renfro kind of outstrikes him. But when you look at the 10-point must scoring system, I guess you can give rounds 2 and 3 to Johnny Parsons. He definitely loses the first round, and I know why that was a split decision. It was a very close fight. He gets really beat up in the first round, but he comes back. The second round's close. I think Renfro gets it. The third round, I think you can give it to Johnny Parsons. The second round, though, I think it's kind of Renfro's round. But it's fine. They give the win to Parsons. And, Johnny Parsons is a guy who is going to strike with you. He's not going to take the fight down at all. He's going to be a striker. And Danny Roberts might look to switch it up and take this fight in the ground. It might be smart for him because Parsons has really not been tested down there. Solomon Renfro was able to go 2 for 4 in his takedowns against him. And that, again, is Johnny Parsons' last fight. But for Parsons, he's going to go out there and he's going to slug. I mean, he's going to look for the kill. It's an interesting fight. I'm actually going to take Johnny Parsons, though, to win this fight. I'm not sold on Danny Roberts at all anymore. Again, I said the Zelim Imadaev fight is the last fight where I think Danny Roberts looked really good. That's been a while. Again, to beat Magomed Sharapov has fought more recently than what we think Danny Roberts has had a good performance, which is saying something. So I'm going to go with Johnny Roberts. Sorry, not Johnny Roberts. I'm confusing everyone. I'm going with Johnny Parsons. Sorry, it's 1:30 in the morning. I am taking Johnny Parsons to win this fight. Will he get it by finish? I think he will. I think he's going to go out there and slug it. I really think both these guys are going to stand in the middle of the octagon and they're going to trade. I think it's going to be a pretty good performance for the crowd here. I think on the undercard, Johnny Parsons comes in. This guy's a madman when he fights. I think he's going to go out there and he's going to pick up a first-round knockout victory and beat Danny Roberts. So next up, we will have a fight here between Chris Duncan and we will have Yanal Ashmouz. For Ashmouz, his first fight in the UFC was a fight that kind of came out of nowhere. It was on that pay-per-view card, UFC 286. He knocks out Sam Patterson in the first round. It's a fight where he's a huge underdog. Is Ashmouz? He's a plus 225 underdog, and the Israeli fighter comes in there and picks up a huge first-round knockout victory in his first fight in the UFC. He'll now be taking on Chris Duncan, a guy who also made his UFC debut at UFC 286, but had a much closer fight than Ashmouz did. For Duncan, he had a split decision victory over Omar Morales. It was a fight that we thought Chris Duncan was going to win, which he did. But again, it was a split decision fight. It was a really close one. Duncan in that fight really showed off his wrestling game, really put on the wrestling boots and outgrinded Omar Morales to victory. He had 130-27 card on that one for Morales and then 229-28 for Chris Duncan. But again, for Duncan, that's likely what I think his best pathway to victory in this fight is going to be, because Yanal Ashmouz can strike. You saw that fight against Sam Patterson. The guy's got power. It only took him a minute and 15 seconds to put down Sam Patterson, a highly touted prospect, in fact, in Sam Patterson, a guy who was 10-1-1 coming into that fight. And yeah, Yanal Ashmouz put him down and knocked him out cold. Put him down the counter left. Did he put him out cold? He put him down, though. But again, for Yanal Ashmouz, coming off the win on the PFL Challenger Series before that, where he beats Dennis Hughes by unanimous decision. The guy's a good striker, though. He's a really good striker. His ground game isn't horrible as well. And Chris Duncan, too, though, is a guy who can strike with you as well. 7 wins by knockout so far in his career. He had, 3 fights in Bellator where he went 3-0. He got a shot in the Contender Series where he ended up getting knocked out by Slavakaz, Vyacheslav Borshev by second-round knockout. But then he came back, won 2 fights, one in the Contender Series where a knockout victory over Charlie Campbell, and then he got the shot, beats Omar Morales by split decision, and now here we are with him and Yanal Ashmouz. I think someone gets knocked out. It's a really good fight here because, again, Ashmouz, a really good striker. I mean, he's, really sits down his punches, really throws with aggression. The guy is only 5'9", which is a little short for a lightweight, honestly. I mean, in the age of, I guess 5'10" is like an average lightweight, so maybe just like slightly below average is Yanal Ashmouz. Chris Duncan's 5'10", so it's really not going to make that much of a difference. But I think you see a striking fight. If anything, I think you will see Duncan try to mix it up a little bit with his wrestling, like what he did against Omar Morales. But I really think Yanal Ashmouz is going to be one of these guys that's going to be really tough to handle. I really like the striking game out of him. I really like the shots that he throws. His counter punching's pretty good. You saw in that fight where, again, he lands that left shot against Patterson. Yeah, I'm going to take Yanal Ashmouz. I'm high on the guy. I think he's pretty solid. And I think, again, Tapology, 78% going with him, 22% going with Duncan. The odds, slight favorites, Chris Duncan. I don't know about that. Again, I don't know on Sunday if these odds are still going to be the same. But if it's still like this, minus 105 for Yanal Ashmouz being an underdog right now is crazy for me. Give me Yanal Ashmouz to go out there and beat Chris Duncan. I think, again, someone's 0 in the UFC has got to go. Ashmouz is actually undefeated professionally. But I'm gonna go with the 7-0 fighter, Yanal Ashmouz, to beat Chris Duncan by first round knockout. Next up in the lightweight division, we have got Mark Diakiese fighting Joel Alvarez. It's a tough stylistic matchup for Mark Diakiese because what Mark Diakiese has done recently is that he's become a wrestler. Now, I know the Michael Menace Johnson fight was not that way, but prior to the Michael Johnson fight, it was Mark Diakiese really looking for takedowns, really just trying to sit guys down, not by striking with them, but just trying to take them down. Now, he tried to take down Michael Johnson. He couldn't. He tried 6 takedowns. He didn't land a single one of them. Now, Diakiese goes out there, he outstrikes Johnson in the first round, picks up the round in the first, but then drops the next 2 definitely because Michael Johnson really just swarms him, blitzes him, and really just has his way with Mark Diakiese on the feet. So Bone Crusher loses that fight. But what did Mark Diakiese do prior to the Johnson fight? Well, it's just wrestling masterclass over Damir Hadzovic. And Mark Diakiese, I think, got to this point in his career where I honestly think it was probably the Alvarez fight, but it was probably the Rafael Fiziev fight. Mark Diakiese came into the Rafael Fiziev fight, and he came out of that fight saying, you know what, I don't want to strike with these guys anymore. This is getting ridiculous. I'm just going to really work on my wrestling, and I'm just going to try to put guys down and hold them down. And I don't really care how, the lack of entertaining it is. I don't care if people like it or not. I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to go double my paycheck and win fights to get my win money. And that's what he did. Again, he loses to Rafael Alvarez. That happened to get subbed in the first round. But the Slava Claus fight in Columbus, Ohio, they booked that fight that was back in the time, by the way, where the UFC was only booking like fight nights in arenas like every once in a while. So they only put the best fights on the fight nights, and they thought we were going to get a striking fight between Diakiese and Borshev. No, Diakiese just sits down Borshev grappling, and he puts him down for 12 minutes and 30 seconds. And again, that's what Mark Diakiese had to do to pick up the victory. His next fight after that, same thing. Damir Hadzovic holds him down in London, 13 and a half minutes of control. Now, he was not able to do that to Michael Johnson because Johnson's takedown defense was good enough to keep the fight on the feet. Is he going to be able to do that against Joe Alvarez? I don't know, because Alvarez has never stuffed a takedown in the UFC. Why? Because he's fine with having fights on the ground. El Finamino's okay with it. He's okay with being on the ground, so when guys shoot takedowns on him, it's not the end of the world. Like, he's been taken down quite often, actually. He's been taken down 6 times in the UFC. He's only actually lost 2 fights. His first fight being the Damir Ismagulov fight, where he loses by unanimous decision, and then the Arman Tsarukyan fight in his last one, where he gets TKO'd in the second round, where Tsarukyan says, all right, to hell with your grappling. I'm going to take you down, and I'm just going to, work my elbows and, just ground and pound you down there. And that's what Tsarukyan did. And now, for Arman Tsarukyan, there is a definite chance he could be fighting Islam Makhachev next, because Makhachev does not have an opponent for Abu Dhabi. I don't know. I think, for the UFC, I think the smart thing to do is just push Makhachev back. I know he's been ready to fight that day, but just have Makhachev, I don't know, co-main event in November, and then have Colby and Leon main event in Abu Dhabi. I know it's not maybe the best destination to have Colby and Leon. I know this is the card, really, where Colby and Leon should be fighting, but it is what it is. For Joel Alvarez, though, again, he gets finished by Arman Tsarukyan. I know Tsarukyan might not be next, because they're looking for someone instead of Oliveira. Guys, it's Mateusz Gamrot, because Gamrot beat Tsarukyan, and oh, by the way, I know Gamrot, people thought he didn't beat Jalen Turner, but Tsarukyan didn't look good against Joaquim Silva, so it probably should be Mateusz Gamrot, I think, but Tsarukyan, Makhachev 2 probably sells better. I don't know. Anyways, it should be a co-main event, though, to Colby and Leon. It should. Anyways, Diakiese Alvarez here. So, what? Mark Diakiese's going to take him down? Sure. Does he hold Joel Alvarez down, though? I don't know. I really don't know. Because I think Alvarez is the better grappler by far. I think that wrestling-wise, yeah, Diakiese's better. But then what happens once that fight hits the ground? I think Diakiese's going to try it. And again, Alvarez has yet to stuff a takedown in the UFC, so I think he's going to be willing to engage in that style of fight. It's just a matter of what Mark Diakiese is able to do down there. I don't know how much really he's able to do. Because again, we might get just a situation like the Rafael Alvarez fight, where Alvarez drops to his guard, gets a guillotine on Diakiese, smits him. I'm not saying the same exact sequence is going to happen in the Joel Alvarez fight, but I think Joel Alvarez is able to find that submission early because I think Diakiese will look for the takedown early. I think Alvarez is just going to be the better jiu-jitsu player. I think Joel Alvarez is able to find that submission. He's able to find it early. Give me El Phenomeno, Joel Alvarez to win this fight by first round submission. Yeah, give me him to pick up the victory. And also, just real quick note, 2 fighters in this card with the nickname El Phenomeno. Well, actually, Kellen Vieira is just Phenomeno, but Joel Alvarez is El Phenomeno. Thought I mentioned it. Anyways, on to our next fight. We got Daniel Marcos taking on Davy Grant. Dangerous Davy Grant is back. He is a slight favorite on Tapology. 63% of the vote going for him, but 37% of the vote going for his opponent in Daniel Marcos. And for Marcos, the undefeated Peruvian fighter fighting out of San Miguel, Lima, Peru. Coming off his last fight, the win over Simon Oliveira, where he finishes Oliveira in the second round by TKO in that card in Brazil early in this year with, of course, Jamal Hill and Glover Teixeira on the main event. Again, as I'm recording this, I just found out literally 2 hours ago that Jamal Hill vacated the light heavyweight championship, which is crazy. So what happens? Does Yuri really get to fight for the championship next? I think they're probably going to do Jan Blachowicz and Alex Pereira for the interim or for the vacant championship, right? Or do they do Prochazka versus Magomed Ankalaev? That's probably the smart fight to do for the world championship. But if you want to get interesting, do Blachowicz and Pereira, and then you have Yuri fight the winner. Because Ankalaev, nobody's heard from Ankalaev in a while. You might as well just throw the light heavyweight championship on Blachowicz and Pereira. You can still have it in the co-main event because you have the damn BMF title in the main event, so you can still have a co-main event. I think it works. That's what I think they should do. We will see what happens in the upcoming days, but I wouldn't be surprised if the UFC just puts the vacant championship on a fight between Prochazka and Ankalaev. I think maybe, yeah, that's probably all they got, right? Like, who else would they put the title fight on? Anyways, like Johnny Walker. If they do Johnny Walker and Yuri Prochazka for the world championship, I don't know what to say. Anyways, Daniel Marcos taking on Davy Grant. So yeah, Marcos' fight in the Contender Series was good. He, really just wipes out Brandon Lewis. He beats him by unanimous decision. He beats Simon Oliveira. He finishes him in the second round. It's a good performance. UFC 283 again. Marcos in that first round outstrikes Oliveira. Oliveira has a little bit of control time, kind of ties up Marcos in that first round, but in the second round again, Marcos takes over. He gets the knockdown. He ends up getting the finish. It's the knees that does it for Daniel Marcos in that fight. But the favorite in this one, I believe Grant's the favorite. Oh no, Grant's an underdog. But on Tapology, the favorite will be Davy Grant. Now, he's coming off back-to-back wins. The win over Luis Smoka in 2022. He finishes him on the ground in the third round, and then another third-round submission victory. Well, the first one was a TKO against Smoka, but a third-round submission victory over Rafael Assunção. He submits Assunção with an inverted triangle choke, a tremendous finish for him earlier this year in 2023. That, of course, was on Jan Dvalishvili from the Virgin Hotels in Las Vegas, but for Davy Grant, did drop back-to-back fights before that 2-fight winning streak, but they're tough fights. The Marlon Chito Rivera fight was an excellent fight that he's just on the losing end of. He loses it by unanimous decision and wins fight of the night. He wins fight of the night in a loss to Adrian Yanez in a split decision on that Kelton Vieira Misha Tate card, and then again comes back, knocks out Smolka, finishes Assunção on the ground. The guy has been collecting performance bonuses left and right. In his last 6 fights, there's only been 1 fight where he did not get a performance in the night bonus. It is that Smolka victory. But I mean, before the Vera loss, a knockout finish over Jonathan Martinez where he wins knockout of the night, a knockout finish where he wins knockout of the night against Martin Day. Davy Grant's been really putting it together. His striking's really coming into his own. His grappling is really working as well. Davy Grant is an all-around really good fighter. However, he's 37 years old now, and he gets Daniel Marcos, a younger guy. He's 30 years old, but a guy who is, definitely looking for the kill here. You saw his last fight really put it all together against Simon Oliveira. Had Oliveira just missing. Oliveira didn't know what to do because he couldn't take him down, so it was just all Daniel Marcos on the feet. Before that, again, the Brandon Lewis win on the Contender Series, wins over in 300 Sparta promotion over in Lima, Peru, where he was the world champion over there. He's the bantamweight champion over in 300 Sparta. Daniel Marcos is good. This is a guy who's primarily just a striker. He does not have a win by submission. He's going to go out there. He's going to strike with you. Now, Davy Grant, I think, will have a very good advantage on the ground. I think that's where Davy Grant is going to do his work in this fight. It's going to be through the grappling. It's going to be trying to get Daniel Marcos down. My question to you is just how good is Daniel Marcos? Because that's what we don't know. We don't know how good 300 Sparta is in Peru. We don't know really, Simon Oliveira, I believe Oliveira's 2 fights in the UFC, right? He's lost both of them, right? So Tony Gravely and then Daniel Marcos. What do we get out of him? And then Brandon Lewis is a guy who we fought in the Contender Series. He's 6-2 now. He's lost twice in the Contender to Mo Miller and Daniel Marcos. Again, what do we have out of Brandon Lewis? My point exactly. We don't know what Brandon Lewis is really going to show out to be. So how good is Daniel Marcos really? I don't know. We know how good Davey Grant is. You know the type of guys Davey Grant has been in the octagon with. Tapology has him as a borderline top 15 guy. They've got him at number 19. I would agree with that. It's a very tough second fight for Daniel Marcos against a veteran of the sport, a guy who's going to definitely challenge him. I think Grant picks up the victory. I think he's able to do a lot of work on the ground because Marcos is a little bit, at least not proven on the ground. I think Grant's able to go out there. I think Davey Grant's able to win this fight, and I think he gets it done by second. Actually, no, we're going to go another third-round finish for Davey Grant. Give me Davey Grant by third-round TKO. I think he's going to really work on Daniel Marcos. He keeps a high pace in there. The pressure's going to be on. Davey Grant goes out there and picks up a third-round TKO victory over Daniel Marcos. On to the heavyweight division, we've got Mick Parkin taking on Jamal Pogues. Again, kind of low-level heavyweight fighting. Mick Parkin is a newcomer to the UFC for, of course, his opponent in this fight in Jamal Pogues. Pogues is a guy who has had a fight in the UFC. It's a win over Josh Parisian. For Parisian, did not get to fight Walt Harris on Saturday because Harris tested positive for a banned substance. Now, Harris is saying it's the same banned substance he's been taking his entire career, so I don't know entirely what's going to happen with that. But again, for Parisian was not able to get his last fight. He's taking on the guy, though. Mick Parkin's taking on the guy who just beat Josh Parisian in Jamal Pogues. And Pogues is the only fight in the UFC where he was looking to graduate from the ranks of the low-level heavyweights. He went out there and he beat Josh Parisian. He beat some 30-27 on 2 cards and 29-28 on the other card. It's a fight where Pogues really looks to his wrestling. He really looks to take down Josh Parisian because that, again, is kind of a weak spot in Parisian's game. It was a fight where he classically, this wasn't this fight, but Parisian's has famously been humped in the octagon before. Dontel Mays got him down, got him in north-south position, and just humped him. Just humped his face. And, Herb Dean was like watching the fight, and he's like, yeah, just put it right in his face. Anyways, so that's happened to Parisian in the past. Jamal Pogues saw that. He did not hump Josh Parisian. He took him down and he held him down. Now, I don't think there will be any humping in this fight, but Mick Parkin's a guy who's coming off his win in the Contender Series, a win over another undefeated fighter in Eduardo Neves. He goes in there and he submits Neves by submission in the first round. But again, Parkin has gone in there, and that's his only submission win yet to date. This is a guy before that has really shown the knockout power. He's really shown the striking. But for Parkin, Eduardo Neves is the only fighter in his career so far, or is the only opponent so far in his career that he's beat who has had a winning record. That's not ideal. Parkin is a British fighter. He's coming out of England. That's why he's on this card, obviously. We'll see really what Jamal Pogues is able to do. Because on the feet, I think, even though Parkin, again, it's kind of been a can crusher so far, I think Parkin's striking game is a little bit better. I think it is. But on the ground, hey, Jamal Pogues, again, showed in the Josh Parisian fight that he's able to go out there and get takedowns, especially at the UFC level. We've seen it before in the Contender Series as well in his first outing in 2019. Constant pressure with the takedowns. I don't really worry that Jamal Pogues will get submitted on the ground by Mick Parkin. I really don't think so. I think that was just a one-time thing, honestly. And then on the feet, again, Parkin, he's not bad, but I think it's a really good look at underdog pick here. Jamal Pogues, again, both these guys 27 years of age, but I just think Parkin's incredibly, he's just green. And I guess as I check the odds, Pogues is not an underdog. On Tapology, he's a big underdog at 26%, Parkin at 74%. Pogues is actually the favorite going into this fight. You have him at minus 145 and Parkin at plus 120. I think that's fair because really I think Parkin's unproven. And Pogues has shown that, again, he's able to win at the UFC level. Even if it is against Josh Parisian, he's able to go out there and win on the UFC level. I think he's able to go out there. I think he's able to successfully shoot on Parkin. I think he's successfully able to hold Parkin down on the feet. I think Pogues is able to do just enough to the point where he's not going to get knocked out. And I think he's able to go out here into enemy territory. I think the United States fighter in Jamal Pogues is able to go into Britain and win this fight, or to go into England and win the fight. So yeah, give me Jamal Pogues to win this fight. I think the wrestling is going to play a huge factor in this fight. Striking wise, I think Pogues again is just going to be able to stay out of getting knocked out. And on the ground, I really don't think off his back Parkins is really going to threaten a lot against Pogues. People are picking Parkin because they think he's going to be able to get a takedown and then submit Jamal Pogues. I don't think he's going to be able to do that. I like Pogues to actually go out there and get some takedowns, hold him down, and not get submitted, obviously, because I don't think Parkin's going to be really reversing position at all. So, Jamal Pogues, give me the Stormtrooper. I think he's able to win. It's going to be one of those heavyweight fights that end by decision, but yeah, give me Jamal Pogues to win this fight by unanimous decision. On to the main card. We've got a tremendous fight. Two incredible grapplers in Andrea Muniz taking on Paul Craig. It is a very good fight. I don't think this will be opening the main card, but it might. I don't know. I don't know if the bout order will be entirely what I have it right now, but a tremendous fight and a good one between Andrea Muniz and Paul Craig. You know what Paul Craig is going to bring. You know what Andrea Muniz is going to bring. It's going to be incredible jiu-jitsu. But again, both these guys are coming off of losses. For Andrea Muniz, it's a submission loss in the third round in a main event spot against Brendan Allen. And Brendan Allen is a guy that we've been talking about, so really putting it all together. He's won his next fight against Bruno Silva. It's a main event spot. Muniz gets submitted in the third round. Brendan Allen, surprisingly was the better grappler in that fight. I thought that was a fight that Muniz was going to be able to take advantage of the grappling, and he couldn't. The first round's a striking round that Allen wins. The second round, Allen takes him down, or the fight ends up on the ground. Allen, gets top control, ends up winning that round. In the third round, Allen takes him down and submits him, which was surprising because nobody's been able to do that to Andrea Muniz yet in the UFC. Because Muniz before that beats Uriah Hall. He beats him on the ground, and that fight was boring, but he beats Uriah Hall on the ground. He sends Uriah Hall to retirement to go box Le'Veon Bell next, which he won, so good for him. On Anderson Silva's undercard and Jake Paul's undercard. He beats Eric Anders, does Andrea Muniz before that. He submits him in the first round. He breaks Jacare Souza's arm, which is crazy, by armbar. He submits Bartosz Fabinski by armbar. Like, Muniz is really good at getting submissions, and especially armbars in that certain way. But he's going to be getting a guy in Paul Craig who, pure jiu-jitsu-wise, might not be as good as Andrea Muniz, but I don't know, because again, Brendan Allen was able to submit Andrea Muniz. That's what makes this fight really intriguing for me. And Paul Craig, again, coming off his last fight at 205 pounds, is dropping down to middleweight. Paul Craig is cutting 20 more pounds to go fight at middleweight here, which is really interesting, because what Paul Craig are we going to get? Are we going to get the same Paul Craig, or are we going to get a guy who is kind of depleted down there, who doesn't have the cardio that he once had, but he will be a bigger 185-pounder. He is 6'3", so it's crazy. We're going to see a 6'3" middleweight. Muniz is 6'1", though, so you have two generally, I guess 6'1's kind of average. Well, it's above average. I would say it's about 6'1's kind of above average for a middleweight fighter. But you have a really big middleweight in 6'3" Paul Craig, who again is a natural light heavyweight, cutting all the way down to 185 pounds. What are we going to get here? Because you got two primary grapplers. We talk about it all the time. The Bear Jew Paul Craig is one of the few guys in the UFC who will pull guard on you and will openly do that. He is fine with pulling guard on guys because that's how much he trusts his grappling game. Well, Andrea Muniz is really good on the ground too, so I don't think Paul Craig's going to be able to go to that. And okay, Paul Craig likes to be on his back, which is great. Is he going to be able to do that? Because Muniz, Muniz is good on top too. And then if Paul Craig tries to take down Andrea Muniz, that's great. But Andrea Muniz is really good on his back too. So it's really just an intriguing matchup because there's not much I can really offer you in this fight. I can tell you about, okay, Paul Craig has beat the now former light heavyweight champion in Jamal Hill, where he broke his arm back at UFC 263 in Arizona, or how he submits Nikita Krylov after being almost dead to rights in London in March of 2022. I can tell you all of that, but I can also tell you that I just don't know how this fight's going to go because you just don't know who the better grappler is. This fight, basically, you're basing your pick on this fight off who you think the better grappler is, because that's really what's going to determine this fight. Because whoever the better grappler is able to determine where this fight does take place. Because say Andrea Muniz is the better grappler, okay? And say Muniz has success down there, but he wants to fight on the feet and he's having success on the feet. Well, Muniz gets to dictate that. And if it isn't going his way on the feet and Paul Craig is striking, okay, Muniz can just switch it up and get the fight on the ground, right? I think I think both these guys, again, aren't strikers. It's really close in the feet. I'm going to give a slight advantage to Andrea Muniz. And on the ground, I'll give a slight advantage to Andrea Muniz as well. The thing that does throw me off a lot, though, is this Paul Craig's going down. That really it's a weird pick then. It's a really weird pick. I think Andrea Muniz wins. I think he's able to keep top control. And I think he's not going to get a submission, but he's going to be able to win this fight. He's going to be able to out-control Paul Craig. And I think he wins it by unanimous decision. It's such a tough fight for me to pick, though, because, again, two really good grapplers. Craig is on a 2-fight losing streak, sure, but two really good grapplers. And it's Paul Craig down 20 pounds. I'll take the favorite, though. I'll take Andrea Muniz. He's at minus 200. That's the pick I like. Andrea Muniz is able to go out here and pick up the victory by unanimous decision. On to the featherweight division. We have got a fight now between Nathaniel Wood, who's a pretty sizable favorite on Tapology, 92%. The actual odds for him at minus 200, but he'll be taking on Andre Touchy Fili here in the featherweight division. For Andre Fili, we have not seen him since that split decision victory over Bill Algeo. And for Nathaniel Wood, his last fight was a win over Charles Jourdain, where he beat Charles by unanimous decision. Really good victory for Nathaniel Wood. You know the crazy fights that Charles Jourdain will get into. This fight was on the card in Paris, France. And again, it's a good win for Charles Jourdain. It's a good win over Charles Jourdain. Jourdain since then has gone on to beat one Crone Gracie, who looked very bad in their fight at UFC 288. He looked nothing like the Crone Gracie that fought Cub Swanson in Florida in 2019. But for Nathaniel Wood, again, he beats Charles Jourdain. He beats him by unanimous decision. He out-wrestles him. He outstrikes him when it matters. You can make the case the prospect Nathaniel Wood wins every single round in that fight. And now, is Nathaniel Wood still a prospect? I don't know. He's 29 years old. He's had 8 fights in the UFC. This will be his 9th fight in the promotion. But he is on back-to-back wins now after that win over Charles Jourdain and the win over Charles Rosa, where he beats Rosa by unanimous decision. Woods, has back-to-back wins because he dropped on to Casey Kenny. That fight was on UFC 254. It was the Khabib Justin Gaethje card. It's a really good back-and-forth fight. It wins fight of the night, but Casey Kenny just in the end outstrikes Nathaniel Wood and beats him by unanimous decision. Now you might be asking, where is Casey Kenny? I don't know. This guy's in fought since 2021. He beat Nathaniel Wood. They said, all right, go fight the greatest bantamweight of all time, or used to be the greatest bantamweight of all time. I'm sorry, I'm going to say that's Aljamain Sterling now. I think Aljamain Sterling is the greatest bantamweight of all time, and you're not going to find a bigger Dominic Cruz fan than me, but still, Casey Kenny goes out there and has a split decision where he barely loses to Dominic Cruz, then loses a close fight, even though I thought he lost it, to Song Yadong. We haven't seen the guy since. Where is Casey Kenny? Nobody knows. But Nathaniel Wood loses to Casey Kenny. He beat John Castaneda before that, did Wood. He dropped a fight to John Dodson, which is not good at all. But yeah, Nathaniel Wood is coming off back-to-back wins. It looks like he's really settling into his own. His striking's looking good. His grappling's looking good. He'll get a guy here in Andre Touchy Fili, who for Fili, he had the fight where he lost to Joe Anderson Breathu, where he gets knocked out. Oh, by the way, how could I forget the win over Bill Algeo? I guess you can say Fili won that fight, but it's close. It really is. I don't know if he wins that fight. The third round obviously is Fili's because he just takes down Algeo and keeps him down there. The first round's obviously Algeo's. The second round's the weird one. I thought Algeo got the second. They gave it to Andre Fili. He wins the fight by split decision. Really thought Bill Algeo won that fight. I really did. That one's weird to me. But they gave the win to Fili. Before that, again, he got knocked out by Joe Anderson Breathu in 41 seconds. He's got the fight where he's in control and dominating Daniel Pineda, but an eye poke ended up ending the fight by disqualification. Not disqualification, but just a no contest. He lost to Bryce Mitchell before that, did Touchy Fili. He just gets dominated on the ground. He beats Charles Jourdain before that by split decision, where Jourdain was doing a lot of damage on the feet, but for Fili, he was doing a lot of damage. Kind of just mixing up with his wrestling. Honestly, it was another really close fight that I thought Jourdain won. Really thought Jourdain won that fight. It's just that Andre Fili's been on, he's been on the right end of a lot of decisions. I know the one that he was on the wrong end of was the Michael Johnson fight back in, where was that? Boise? No, not Boise. Omaha. No. Was it in Omaha? I gotta check this. It was Gaethje Vic. I think it was in Omaha. Was that in Omaha? I gotta check now. It was in Lincoln, Nebraska. Yeah, one of those. Midwest states. Yeah, one of those Tornado Alley states. But yeah, the Michael Johnson-Fili fight's close. I thought Johnson won that fight, though, pretty decisively. Fili's just been in a lot of close fights, but he gets Nathaniel Wood here, and like I've just kind of been prolonging the inevitable. I really think Nathaniel Wood goes straight through Andre Touchy-Fili here. I don't think it's all that competitive. I think Wood's just so much better. Grappling, he's better. Striking, he's better. Andre Fili has not been all that great recently. Again, I thought he lost the Algeo fight. I thought Andre Fili didn't actually win the Charles Jourdain fight. And you take the Algeo win away from him. You take the Jourdain win away from him. He's lost his last 5 fights. His last wins back in 2019 over Shimon Moraes. The main event of that card was in Sacramento, California. Duran Duranamy and Aspinall. That's the last time Uriah Faber won a fight. So, like, and which is actually an incredible victory. He went out and beat Ricky Simone of all people. But again, I don't think Fili's really put together a really good performance, and Nathaniel Wood has, in all fairness, has really put it together recently. And I think Nathaniel Wood puts together an all-around performance where he wrestles Fili a little bit, but he really strikes with him as well. Nathaniel Wood goes out there and picks up the victory. He'll get it done by unanimous decision. Next up, we are back in the featherweight division for this fight here between Lerone Murphy, England's own, and Joshua Culibao. Culibao, of course, coming in to Lerone Murphy's home turf. For Culibao, 11-1-1 professional record. He is 3-1-1 in the UFC, picking up 3 straight victories after dropping his first fight in the promotion and then having a draw to, again, Charles Jourdain. And then for his opponent in Lerone Murphy, Murphy is undefeated still after winning that split decision over Gabriel Santos. It was a closer fight than maybe Lerone Murphy wanted. He was a minus 180 favorite going into that fight, but he beats Gabriel Santos. He gets it done by split decision. I thought he was the rightful winner in that fight, by the way. I thought he won rounds 2 and 3. I thought Gabriel Santos took the first. But again, Murphy's still undefeated in the UFC. This guy's striking game's pretty damn good. As you saw the knockout knee finish over Makwan Amirkhani in Abu Dhabi at UFC 267. You saw the finish win over Ricardo Ramos back in 2020. He's got the win over Douglas Silva de Andrade, where he's able to avoid the big power shots and the big hooks that D Silva will always throw at you. Again, Lerone Murphy still undefeated in the UFC, but now he gets Joshua Culibao, and Culibao, coming off his last win, a huge victory over Melzik Bagdasaryan, where he submits Bagdasaryan in the second round, UFC 284 over in Australia. And then before that for Culibao, he beats Sungwoo Choi by split decision. It's a fight where he knocks down Choi twice in that fight. He knocks him down in the first and then in the second as well. And then before that, a big win over Shailan Nordembeka. He beats Shailan Nordembeka by unanimous decision. Just really dominates Nordembeka, a guy who, up until his last fight, was doing really well in the UFC, where last fight got finished by Steve Garcia. But yeah, that was a good win for Culibao. He starts his UFC run by having the draw against Charles Jourdain and then the loss to Jalen Turner. How does this fight end up, though? Because, Culibao has shown that he's willing to go out there and strike with guys, and that's the type of fight I think he's going to get with Lerone Murphy. I think that's kind of, that's Lerone Murphy's going to strike with you. Joshua Culibao is going to strike. That just shows for a really fun fight, I think. Because Culibao has yet to successfully land a takedown in the UFC. Lerone Murphy doesn't really shoot them all that often either. It's something that a lot of his opponents are doing. They're shooting on him. Well, it's not something he's really going to have to worry about in a fight against Joshua Culibao. Culibao, again, has not successfully landed a takedown yet in the UFC. So I know he did submit Bagdasaryan, but still, I really don't think it's going to be much of an issue. I think Culibao will be willing to engage in a striking fight with Lerone Murphy, which just creates for fireworks on the feet. Now, it might not necessarily result in a finish. Lerone Murphy will be fighting, by the way, on his 32nd birthday, apparently, according to Tapology. Don't know if that's true or not, but I think you're going to see a stand-up affair. Murphy's got really quick hands. Culibao does too. Culibao will brawl with you as well. But again, Lerone Murphy more of a laid-back approach. He's going to pick his shots, but he's going to pick his shots well. I'm going to take the favorite, though, at home. I'm going to take Lerone Murphy to win this fight by unanimous decision. I don't think he loses his undefeated streak or his perfect record. Yeah, I know he's got the draw in there in his first fight in the UFC to, of course, Zubair Tuhugov at UFC 242. But I think Murphy remains undefeated. I think, again, another performance where he goes out there and picks up the victory. I don't think he's going to get a crazy highlight reel level knockout like he did against Makwan Amirkhani, but I think he does enough to pick up the victory. I think, again, he outstrikes Culibao. Culibao, I don't think is going to take him down, and if he does, I think Murphy's able to keep the fight. Oh, I hope he's able to keep the fight standing, or at least pop back up to his feet, because in his last 2 fights, he was taken down 5 times in both of them. In fights against Makwan Americani and Gabriel Santos, I am hoping and thinking that Leon Murphy can get back up to his feet. So I think he beats Joshua Culibao. I'm going to take him to win this fight by unanimous decision. Okay, on to the next. Jai Herbert in the lightweight division takes on the French fighter in Fares Ziam, and the Black Country banger Jai Herbert is back. There is a reason they keep putting Jai Herbert in these. Oh, I didn't change the graphic yet. There's a reason they keep putting Jai Herbert. Oh, that's Tom Aspinall. Oh, these are all Tom Aspinall. Okay, there's a reason they keep putting Jai Herbert in these situations. Hold on, I gotta fix this real quick, and we'll come back. Okay, finally got it fixed. But yeah, Jai Herbert versus Fares Ziam here. There's a reason, again, they put Jai Herbert in these positions. Because one, yes, he is from England. But two, he does usually put on great performances and fun fights. Now, the last 2 haven't been as great as the Ilia Topuria fight, the Kamaworthy fight, the Moicano fight, the Trinaldo fight. Because even in losses in Jai Herbert's first 4 fights, he was putting on fights that would just result in finishes. The Trinaldo fight gets knocked out in the 3rd round. It's the fight where Trinaldo hits him, Jai Herbert goes and just collapses. That was the classic Dan Hardy, stop the fight. And then he comes back, he gets submitted by Renato Moicano, which just felt like bad booking, but whatever. And then he beats Kamaworthy in a fight where he's supposed to win. Then they give him Ilia Topuria, which, don't forget, he drops Ilia Topuria. That's the most danger we've seen Topuria in yet in his career. The first round, Jai Herbert beats Ilia Topuria. Second round, Topuria, though, comes back and knocks him down, knocks him out. Now it looks like Ilia will be taking on Alexander Volkanovski in his next fight. Volkanovski, let's just be fair, guys, is probably going to just run right through him. Which, honestly, the UFC, by the way, is really setting up for some big cards down the stretch here. Let's take a quick intermission. Let's just real quick, because they've got some big title fights coming up on not many cards, right? So hold on, UFC 292, we've got 2 title fights: Aljamain Sterling, Sean O'Malley, Zhang Weili, Amanda Lemos. The Aljamain Sterling, coming back on 3 months, going back-to-back camps, fighting Sean O'Malley right away, gave them, limited spots for championship fights. That's why they have Alexa Grasso fighting Valentina Shevchenko on Mexican Independence Day on September 16th. But UFC 293, I think, will likely be 2 title fights: Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis, if the fight happens. And then what? The Women's Bantamweight Championship, we're assuming. So, Juliana versus either Raquel Pennington or Holly Holm. And then what? So you got 294, which is in Abu Dhabi. We're thinking Colby Leon. Then Makhachev, right? But then you got more fights too, because you're stuck with November, Jones Miocic, and then December. Okay, so I guess we're assuming Connor's not fighting anymore, right? But you still have the light heavyweight championship, and if Hill vacated, there's got to be something coming soon. So maybe that goes on 293 in Australia. What, Prohashka versus Ankalaev, or what, does 291 get another title fight? An actual title fight in Utah between Bukovic and Pereira? I don't know. And then you got Volkanovski who wants to fight, so maybe the December spot goes to him against Topuria, I think, right? And then, I mean, there's, I'm blanking on one. There's, oh, that's kind of it. Oh, yeah. I was going to say 145. Ronda Rousey, Chelsea Chandler got herself in the news by saying Ronda's coming back. Apparently, Ronda is not coming back. But she is, okay, if you don't watch wrestling, so Ronda Rousey, real quick, I know you didn't show up for a Jai Herbert prediction to hear Ronda Rousey. I will wrap this up quickly. Ronda Rousey's in a storyline in WWE. I'm getting on a Chael Sonnen thing too, where I'm just going off topic. But Ronda Rousey's in a storyline in WWE where she's in a feud, which, if you remember, Shayna Baszler, who fought in the Ultimate Fighter, lost to Juliana Pena. She fought Chris Cyborg once in Strikeforce. That's the rivalry. They're friends in real life, but the rivalry is that Shayna Baszler turned on Ronda Rousey. They've got women's tag team championships in WWE. Anyways, the card happened in London. It was in the O2. WWE did not sell as many tickets as AEW did in England, but that's fine. Anyways, Shayna Baszler turns on Ronda Rousey. They lose the women's tag team championships, and now they have a big match at SummerSlam, likely. The build's been horrible to it because Ronda cannot talk on the mic, nor can Shayna. Shayna's a little bit better than Ronda, but they're both horrible. Anyways, that's the fight. That's the match for SummerSlam, and Ronda's likely to leave the WWE after that. So what does Ronda do? Does she have another kid? Maybe she does that, or it kind of looked like maybe she'd come back to fighting in at 145, a weight class where she can probably win the world championship by beating, Chelsea Chandler. Actually, Norma Dumont might be a fight where Ronda would lose. I'm just saying. But anyways, back to the important stuff, Jai Herbert and Ziam. There's a reason, again, they put Herbert in these spots because he's entertaining. And I talked all this time, and I have not spoken once about Ziam. Well, this is a guy who's 3-2 in the UFC. His first fight in the UFC is a loss to Don match, where he drops it by unanimous decision, but comes back and picks up a huge win over Jamie Mullarkey, then beats Luigi Vendarimni, drops one to Terrence McKinney, where McKinney picked up a huge victory by submitting him in the first round. But Ziam came back and beat Michael Figlak, beats him by unanimous decision. I honestly do not remember a damn thing about this fight over in Paris, France, on that Gone to Ivasa card. Was this like in the very beginning of this card? Maybe. Because if it was, I didn't wake up in time. No, it wasn't. Okay, I don't remember a damn thing about that fight. I remember Abus Magomedov versus Dustin Stolfsus. Yeah, okay, anyways. I remember John McDessie fought in this card too. I don't remember a damn thing about Ziam versus Michael Figlak. I don't. But he wins, right? And now they give him Jai Herbert. Well, okay, Ziam wrestles some. He went 3 for 7 on his takedown attempts against Figlak. You will likely see him try to wrestle Jai Herbert because Herbert, again, has been taken down before. He has been submitted. Ludovic Klein took him down a couple times in their draw at UFC 286. But that was a really good fight because Herbert, again, really worked his ground transitions. Really, he was able to fight on the ground well against Ludovic Klein in that fight. And then Nacho Moicano fight. Moicano again submits him in the second round. But this one in particular, between Herbert and Ziam, I think you're going to see a lot of striking. And Herbert, again, it's a kill or be killed mindset in there. And I think Jai Herbert is going to go out there. I think he's going to find a finish. I think, again, you're going to see him go swing because that's what he does. And now, Jai Herbert, he's been kind of known for having a bad chin because he'd have a lot of fights where he got knocked out. But I think Ziam is not Ziam's not a knockout specialist. His last knockout victory came in HT Fighting Championship 5 in Zurich, Switzerland in 2018. I wouldn't anticipate a Ziam knockout. If anything, is going to come from the Black Country Banger in Jai Herbert, and give me Jai Herbert to win this fight by first round knockout. Okay, on to the next. Why do we care? Why is this in the co-main event? Molly McCann, Julio Stoliarenko. I don't care. I'll give you the pick right now. It's Molly McCann by first round knockout. That's likely what will happen here. They are trying desperately to give Molly McCann a victory, which I'm surprised they didn't continue to do because it's really weird when they gave her Erin Blanchfield, because it was like, okay, well, she's won 2 fights back-to-back by spinning elbow in London, and they book her in New York City against the top prospect in the weight class? Huh? I guess it was to get eyes on Erin Blanchfield, which I guess they were successful in. But Blanchfield still has to fight Tyler Santos in Singapore in a couple weeks or a couple months, where then she'll get a shot against Grasso or Shevchenko. But Blanchfield just dominated her. It wasn't close. Kimura in the first round. That's what's going to happen. Like, Molly McCann is a fun fighter, I guess, to watch, and she's a borderline top 15 fighter, if that. But she's not a top 10 fighter at all. She's not a fighter that's going to make a run for the world championship. And that's why it was so just infuriating after she knocked out Luana Carolina. She took a replica UFC belt and she held it up. Like, what was that? That was ridiculous. That was horrible. It was just stupid. Yeah, so, Molly McCann now gets Julia Stoliarenko. Stoliarenko's 1-5 in the UFC. Like, okay, her first fight, she was on the Ultimate Fighter, the 145 edition. She loses to Leah Letson in the final. Okay, she does not stay on the UFC roster. So she goes back, she wins a couple fights. They book her on short notice because Yana Santos in the pandemic, she loses. There's a fight where Yana Santos somehow, some way was only like a minus 170 favorite in, which is crazy to me. Then after that, Stoliarenko loses to Julia Avila. Avila beats her by rear naked choke in the 3rd round. Then she beats loses to Alexis Davis by unanimous decision. And then gets a win. She submits Jessica Rose Clark in the 1st round by armbar. And then loses to Chelsea Chandler. But she somehow beat Jessica Rose Clark, who Jessica Rose Clark was just on a string of losses towards the tail end of her UFC career. I think it's very likely we are going to see her in the PFL. That seems like a 100% PFL move to go after Jessica Rose Clark and put her immediately in the featherweight division next year and just say, all right, please hope you can beat Amber Lee Brock and you can become a playoff fighter after a 1st round finish. Seriously, that's a PFL move. The booker against Amber Lee Brock and then book the fight you've all been waiting for, Jessica Rose Clark versus Julia Budd in the 2nd round, where the winner goes on to the playoff card. The winner gets to go lose to Larissa Pacheco. And hopefully Kayla Harrison's back by then. I don't know. Anyways, for Stoliarenko, she's 1-5 in the UFC. She's not good. She's really good in armbar, though. Her armbar is really good. Again, that's how she got Jessica Rose Clark. She's got a really good armbar. Basically, every single win she has, she's got 10 wins, 1 by decision, 9 by submission. Basically, every single submission is by armbar. That's what she's trying to do. However, she's not very good. Molly McCann's going to keep her on the feet, and Molly McCann's going to knock her out. The crowd's going to go crazy. Dana White's going to be happy. Dave Portnoy from Barstool's going to be happy. And Molly McCann's going to win by 1st round knockout. She better not pull out a damn UFC belt out the crowd. But yeah, McCann's going to win. It feels like the obvious pick. And again, the Lithuanian fighter, Julia Stoliarenko, just isn't very good. McCann's going to win by 1st round knockout. Okay, main event time. Here we go. Tom Aspinall, Marcin Tybura in the main event. 5 rounds, heavyweight division fight. This fight will likely not go 5 rounds. I highly doubt it will. But Tom Aspinall is back after Aspinall had that fight against Curtis Blades, where unfortunately it just ended in 15 seconds? Yeah, 15 seconds on the dot. Knee injury suffered by Tom Aspinall. Leg injury. Nothing you can put into that. Now, again, what Aspinall are we going to get post-injury? I don't know. But that was a year ago. It will again be 364 days as of the Tybura fight since when he lost to Curtis Blades. But that was Aspinall's first loss in the UFC. He's 12-3 professionally. His 2 losses before that coming to, surprisingly, Stuart Austin, former PFL fighter in 2015, who didn't really do that well in the PFL. He lost to Hernan Ferreira and Bruno Capoloza, who are, by the way, 2 good PFL heavyweights, but still. And then he lost a fight in 2016 as well, did Tom Aspinall. But man, Aspinall is good, because the guy, again, the best performance for him was Alexander Volkov, by far. Because he goes in there and makes it look so effortless. Goes in there, gets a takedown, looks for a straight armbar from half guard and submits Volkov in 3 minutes and 45 seconds. It's by far the best victory for Aspinall imaginable. It's in the main event of a card where they were returning to London. It was a huge victory. That's when the UFC saw, all right, this is our next British star. And they're like, oh, wait, we got Paddy the Baddy still, though. And now Paddy Pimblett, I'm not even going to talk about Paddy Pimblett. Who knows when this guy's going to fight again? Everyone wants the Paddy fight because it is a money fight, but Paddy's going to lose eventually. That's for sure. But that's when the UFC saw, that's their new British star. It's Tom Aspinall. He beat Sergey Spivak before that, and Spivak, okay, look at that guy now, right? Smith's Derek Lewis in a main event. Now you get him and Cyril Gane coming up in France. That's a fight where Spivak can win, right? Because Gane, he's shown that, the grappling is something that he has been very iffy at best. And now you give him a guy who is a pure wrestler and a guy who will grapple with him and Sergey Spivak. That's a tough fight. Right? So, but for Aspinall, he goes in there and just dominates Sergey Spivak, right? He goes in there. Spivak doesn't even land a strike. 16-0, shuts him out, finishes him in the clinch, right? Aspinall before that goes up there, submits Andrei Arlovsky, gets Arlovsky to the ground, sinks in that rear naked choke. Arlovsky taps right away. He knew there was no getting out of that. He didn't even have hooks in, but there was no getting out of that submission hold from Tom Aspinall. He beats up on Alain Boudot, that's supposed to happen. He beats up on Jake Collier, that's supposed to happen. But that's how good Tom Aspinall is. This guy is so talented. He gets Marcin Tybura. Now, I feel like they really put Tybura in a bad spot here because Tybura is a guy who, like, this guy's been winning. You look at his UFC run, like, as of late, Tybura has won 7 out of his last 8 fights. The only loss being to, the guy that Tom Aspinall beat in the main event in London. It's Alexander Volkov. It was a boring fight at UFC 267. But, yeah, it's just all Volkov. He goes in there. He just kind of just outstrikes Tybura. Outstrikes him from range, uses his kicks, Volkov wins. But since then for Tybura, it's a win over Alexander Romanov, where Romanov dominates the first round, but Tybura survives and wins rounds 2 and 3. Now Romanov, has picked up a win since his losing streak, so good for him. But after that, Tybura beats Blagoy Ivanov by unanimous decision, but again, that's Romanov's win, is Blagoy Ivanov. Ivanov's washed, he just is. Like, that's simple. But Tybura, again, has been putting it together, I think. Like, again, he showed it started because Tybura always had the thing around him that he was a boring fighter, right? That was always Marcin Tybura. He was boring. He was not fun to watch. But it changed. The Ben Rothwell fight changed it for me. Fight night in Abu Dhabi, Moraes Sandhagen. He goes out there in that fight, and he puts it on Ben Rothwell. BKFC's own Ben Rothwell. Marcin Tybura just, throws hooks, really damages Ben Rothwell in that fight. It's a really good performance for him. And then he goes out and knocks out Greg Hardy. And then he knocks out Walt Harris, TKOs him. And then he loses to Volkov. But now he's beat Romanov and Ivanov in back-to-back fights. Good for Tybura, man. Really good for Marcin Tybura, finally making his way back to a UFC main event, because the last one he got was back in 2017, where he lost a 5-round decision to Fabricio Verdum in Sydney, New South Wales. It was a long time ago. That's 6 years ago. However, they put him in a main event spot where he's going to get absolutely obliterated in. Like, this won't be close, right? This is not close. Tom Aspinall, any way he wants it. By knockout, I think, this time. Because that is the path of least resistance. It's the easiest pathway to victory for Tom Aspinall, is to knock out Marcin Tybura in the first round. Because why even play on the ground with Tybura? Because that's where Tybura is pretty solid in, right? Tybura will be the heavier fighter, I'm assuming, in this fight, right? Yeah, he's going to be the heavier fighter. Why even go to it? Aspinall, again, this is a guy who has trained with Tyson Fury. He's a good boxer. Like, Aspinall is going to go out there and he's going to outstrike Marcin Tybura. He's going to find this shot and he's going to put him down early in the first round, and he's going to show you why this is a guy to, watch out for in the heavyweight division. Now, I don't know how the heavyweight division is going to go, obviously, with John Jones fighting Stipe Miocic next. And then you got Sergey Pavlovich, the only guy without a fight in the top 11 right now, at least on Tapology. The top 11 heavyweight fighters in the UFC's, heavyweight division all have fights. I can go through them. Curtis Blades is going to be fighting Jaitan Almeida. John Jones is going to be fighting Stipe Miocic. Cito Gan's going to be fighting Sergey Spivak. Volkov is going to be fighting Taito Ivasa, right? And then Marcin Tybura is fighting Tom Aspinall. Those are all the top guys. The only guy who does not have a fight is Sergey Pavlovich. I know you hate to get rid of a future title challenger in Pavlovich versus Aspinall, but that's likely the fight you do, but definitely that's the fight you do for the championship. If Jones beats Stipe and retires, or Stipe wins and retires, that's the obvious fight, right? I feel like the winner of John Jones and Stipe Miocic is going to retire. I think maybe John sticks around, but really John's been talking about, well, what do I have to prove? I beat Stipe Miocic, who's the greatest heavyweight of all time, in New York City. I retire at home. What is there left for me in the sport? Which is true, because why should John Jones risk it against to the general public, an unknown Sergey Pavlovich? To the public, Sergey Pavlovich is just some Russian guy who hits hard, who's not Drago, right? Like, and I know people don't know who Volkov is. I'm using a Rocky reference, obviously. But, right? Like, why does Jones, need that fight? He doesn't. So, there's no point in him taking it. And if Sergey Pavlovich does win, 3 fights, people think he is better than John Jones. Well, John Jones has come back from 5-year layoffs before. He can come back with a 3-year, 2-year layoff. If he really wants to, he can come back as a legacy fight. If Sergey Pavlovich is really building that legacy, Jones can come back and fight Sergey Pavlovich if he needs. But I think Jones beats Stipe, and unfortunately, again, John Jones, it's hard to be that guy's fan, but I am a fan of John Jones. Again, it's hard to be his fan, but unfortunately, I think Jones will retire after he likely beats the shit out of Stipe Miocic, and I like Stipe too, but he's gonna beat the living hell out of Stipe. So then what? Okay, Sergey Tom Aspinall for the World Championship, right? UFC wants their British star. They got Leon Edwards. Tom Aspinall can be the other, right? So Aspinall Pavlovich, I think it's next. As long as Aspinall wins, it just makes sense because again, Pavlovich is not booked against anybody else. And if they really want to do this, right, you book Aspinall and Pavlovich for the pay-per-view in December, because then if Jones vacates the belt, then boom, Aspinall Pavlovich, you can put him right away for the World Championship in December. So, and if Jones wants to keep fighting, then boom. I know you hate to eliminate a contender, but the winner of Pavlovich Aspinall would be a true, real contender for John Jones to get the next World Championship shot. So that's what I think happens next. But in this one, yeah, Tom Aspinall first round knockout any way he wants it against Marcin Tybura. So folks, thank God for watching our UFC Fight Night London full card predictions here on the channel with Tom Aspinall and Marcin Tybura in the main event. Make sure to join us on Tuesday for a closer look on one of these 30 fighters on this card. You can take your guesses in the comment section down below, but it's going to be one of these 30 guys or one of these 30 fighters on this card. And we will see you next week back on pay-per-view, Salt Lake City, Utah, from the Delta Arena. Dustin the Diamond Poirier, Justin the Highlight Gagey for the BMF Championship, and then maybe Jan Blachowicz, Alex Pereira for the Light Heavyweight Championship. And look at, this fight card. Paulo Costa, Ikram Askarov, Tony Ferguson, Bobby Green, Michael Chiesa, Kevin Holland. They put Wonderboy Thompson on the prelims. They put Derek Lewis on the prelims. My goodness, what a card. That's coming from Salt Lake City next week. So folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. And Mamba forever.